we're in a very high dopamine state where we're like on our phone on the couch, that kind of thing. We know we need to get to our desk and do something. That gap between I want to do this thing and I'm actually doing it can be physically painful with ADHD. Like that dopamine drop can be physically uncomfortable. And so learning how to add steps in to take you from I need to do this thing, but I'm not doing it. I'm on my phone. I'm sort of dopamine hunting to actually getting the thing done and being able to say, I can do this consistently and I have control over being able to do this.
Hey everyone, I'm Megs, and you're listening to the Mindful Megs podcast, Organizing an ADHD Brain, where you will hear stories from me and others on how we organize both our brains and our lives while living with ADHD. We talk about how ADHD can be your superpower if you know how to harness it. I found out I had ADHD 2 years ago, and it was very difficult for me to find acceptance. Now that I know so much, I want to share what I know and help others understand that this diagnosis is not your downfall. It's a eureka moment where you can now understand how your brain operates and how to figure out how to thrive. You can expect to feel inspired, like you're not alone, and learn about so many of the incredible organizational tools there are to help your head stay on straight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey everyone, I am so excited for our guest today. I met her randomly through emails that I get called Hero. It's Help Every Reporter Out. Skye was looking for people talking about ADHD who had tips on how they live their life a little bit better. So I reached out to her, we scheduled an interview, and I happened to have the opportunity to interview her first. And she is fascinating. I even learned more about ADHD just in having this conversation with her and different ways I can manage my day that's going to help. Some of you, if you've been following for a little bit, know that I have a daily to-do list download. If you go to my website, it's right there. You can put in your information. It sends you the download right away. It just talks about your priorities and setting up time to do 6 things. And I know that sounds like it's not a lot to do, especially if you're following me, you have ADHD. We know that we can get so much more done in a day. But 6 things makes it manageable. And I even put on there a little time block calendar for you to go ahead and fill it in. But then she was giving me some tips on how she manages her day in a totally different way. And so I think it could still correspond with the way that I set up my daily to-do list, but just kind of fascinating with the more questions I ask, the more I learn about how my brain works and how your brain works. It's just so darn cool. I'm really excited for you to hear more about Skye. All of her information is in the show notes below, so definitely go check her out. In other news, my husband and I built a wall in our backyard this weekend, so that was really cool. If you're following me on TikTok, I will post some videos there. If there's other places you want to see it, just let me know. I typically spend most of my time on TikTok when it comes to sharing every day. Other than that, I'm happy to have you on my email list because I'll keep you updated there as well. I am also going to be launching my coaching program here pretty soon. I've been dabbling in coaching since I started professionally organizing, but I just finished a 90-day round with a client and it lit me up to the point that I didn't even realize I could have so much joy doing this. I've had coaches before and they've helped me achieve things that I just never really even thought I could achieve. And now to be doing it on my own feels really, really cool. One thing that my client said to me the other day was that I helped her believe in herself and that she was capable of doing some of the things that we talked about when it came to ADHD. What? Like, that is literally my goal in life. I want to help people believe in themselves, no matter what your brain looks like or feels like. And I'm pumped to keep doing that. So keep listening along. I'll share more as more comes out about the coaching program. I'm likely going to be doing individual coaching at first and then more group coaching down the line. I also want to shout out my new Patreon followers. Thank you so much for joining me on Patreon. We have Rosemarie, who is a new member, and Racely Lopez. I hope I said your name right. Thank you so much for following me. If you're interested in joining me and supporting the podcast on Patreon, it's available in the show notes below. Just click on the link. Now, without further ado, a riveting episode with Skye. Welcome back to Organizing an ADHD Brain. I am here with Skye Waterson, joining us all the way from New Zealand, and she works and founded the ADHD Skills Lab. And so, Skye, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, hi. It's wonderful to be here. So, yeah, my name's Skye. I'm a former academic, and I'm now founder of Unconventional Organization and the ADHD Skills Lab podcast. And I am, based in New Zealand, which is why I have this accent, but I primarily work with people in the US and the UK, which means that I do get up that early.
Okay, that's amazing. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into the ADHD space?
I got in a bit in a surprising way. So I was on track to be an academic. That was my career. And I started my doctorate and I went in to get maybe dyslexia diagnosis. I wasn't sure. I just knew I needed something. And 4 hours later, I came out and they said, well, we don't know about dyslexia, but we definitely think you have ADHD. And I was like, adults can get ADHD because I'd worked in development. So I'd learned about it for children, but at the time there just was no information about it for adults that I'd seen. So it was a huge, huge surprise. And it was a big shift in what I did. And it meant that I changed my research. Well, I didn't change my research, but I started doing a lot more research into ADHD and that developed into working in the university and then with schools and then with this organization.
It's so interesting because as women with ADHD, and part of ADHD is you get excited about something and you start to learn about something, and then you just can't stop learning about something.
Yeah.
And I find that that's the case with ADHD for me. The more I learn about my brain, the more fascinating it becomes. What were you originally getting your doctorate in?
So my doctorate was in population health. I did my master's in sociology and my undergraduate in psychology. If that makes me sound ADHD, well, there you go. And so I was looking at how parents in New Zealand experience economic satisfaction. My focus academically has always been on developing phrases that, people don't have a word. When you have that thing, but you don't have a word for that thing, and then you find that thing like rejection sensitivity, for example, and it's just a powerful thing. I've always been interested in that. And so that was my focus in academia. And then once I found out about ADHD, that was a huge focus for me. And I started actually writing articles and putting them on the internet as a kind of accountability. And that became the basis for the organization that we run today, was those articles.
Wow. And I stalked your website a little bit before we started talking today, and you have multiple ADHD coaches that work with people with ADHD to help them thrive, from it looked like just general day-to-day life all the way to executive coaching, which I thought was, yes, like this is exactly what people out there need. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So we've grown. It's been wonderful. We have the academy, which is where we sort of have a community support and one-on-one support. We help all of our focuses on helping ADHD adults reach their goals. And then within that, we work with, depending on your goals, it might be like I just, met with someone who's trying to get employment, or, we work all the way up to executive coaching, which is where I particularly work with people who have, awesome goals. I've worked with, Google directors, I've worked with BBC hosts, things like that. So people who have big, big goals. I love helping people with those goals. It's so much fun.
That's amazing. And what would you say is the best part about the transformation, helping them through some of the difficulties that come along with ADHD?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. So one of the things that is so fun about the transformation is the people you wouldn't expect with such cool jobs and amazing things, and they'll come in and they'll be very, very negative about themselves because we're all comparing ourselves to that perfect neurotypical. You probably already got a jump on the day and did yoga and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll feel very negative about ourselves, often, and say, oh, I can't do things. And so one of my favorite transformations is helping people realize that the goal that they have, the one that they're not necessarily admitting, but they really want to do it, or they've thought about how fun it would be to do this thing, is achievable, and then helping them go down that path to achieve that goal and actually see it coming true. And, people have said, my life has changed. I feel so, so amazing. And it's like, no, you did this. You had this ability. And I love seeing the realization that this is actually happening. This is actually going to happen in people.
That's so neat because it just reminds me, I've been interviewing some incredible women on my podcast, only one man so far, but there's some incredible people out there with ADHD. And a lot of people don't equate ADHD with success or ADHD with big goals. And that's one of the things I want to go about changing is the status quo that ADHD means, well, sucks for you, because that's not the case. Our brains are so creative and incredible. And just look at you, for example, you went and got your undergraduate and then you got your master's degree. And then you didn't find out about this diagnosis until you were literally getting your PhD. So what were some of the systems that you found that you put in place for yourself before you even knew ADHD existed in your life?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's funny as you say that. I'm like, oh, my own imposter. We all struggle with imposter syndrome. Actually, apparently, the more you know, the more you struggle with imposter syndrome. So if that's you out there, just know that. For myself, what structures? So yeah, I had a lot of structures. I think I was very, very structured before I got my ADHD diagnosis. I would almost say I was over-engineered a little bit. I had that classic burnout cycle where I would go very hard for a year, burn out, go very hard for another year. And so that was kind of the way I operated. And when I had the diagnosis, what was really helpful for me was understanding, okay, this thing was helpful because it was supporting my tired blindness. This thing was helpful because it was supporting my working memory. But this thing wasn't helpful at all. I just tacked it on because one time I did it and it seemed to work. So that was kind of, I was able to shed some things that were weighing me down. And so, one of the things that was helpful was I didn't have to spend as long planning much time because I knew exactly what was giving me the support I needed and what was unnecessary.
So what have you found now that you know you have ADHD? What kind of systems have you implemented in your own life in addition to what you had before after shedding some of those older ones?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of big pieces and I teach them all, but how to get into focus. So developing a little bit of a system for that, when we talk about at the top of, we might say, oh, I really want to write that paper, fill in that form, respond to that email, whatever it is, but we're in a very high dopamine state where we're on our phone, on the couch, that kind of thing. We know we need to get to our desk and do something. That gap between I want to do this thing and I'm actually doing it can be physically painful with ADHD. Like that dopamine drop can be physically uncomfortable. And so learning how to add steps in to take you from I need to do this thing, but I'm not doing it. I'm on my phone. I'm sort of dopamine hunting to actually getting the thing done and being able to say, I can do this consistently and I have control over being able to do this. That for me was probably one of the most effective things that I didn't have any knowledge of before I was diagnosed.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir over here because dopamine hunting, oh my gosh. Just when I think I've conquered ADHD and I have this incredible day where I feel like I've not rushed through things, but I've actually gotten things done. Then the next day I am on the couch and I have my phone in front of me and I'm like, oh, why can't I get to my computer? So that is such a real thing. So can you give us a hint as to how we start? How do we get to that point where we can start to move in the right direction?
Definitely. So we call it stepping into focus. And basically, there's a couple of like pieces, essentially. The first one you really want to focus on is rewarding yourself for actually getting to your desk.
Mm.
Often with ADHD, we're talking about a reward afterwards. That's kind of a neurotypical way of doing things. But if you look at the research into dopamine and ADHD, there's a lot of studies to indicate that the sort of reward mechanisms in our brain don't actually give us the same reward as if we were neurotypical. We didn't have ADHD. And so what that means is for us, it's just like a terrible thing. And then there's a break where you don't have to do the terrible thing. And so the reward doesn't really work. So if we can say, okay, I'm going to reward myself for sitting down, maybe I'm going to sit down with a cup of tea or coffee or whatever your beverage is. I'm going to turn on, some music. I'm going to read an article. That's going to be the first step. That's awesome. And then from there, we talk about dialing down the dopamine. So we're not turning it off. We're not saying, okay, now I'm going to get to work, turn off like everything, get straight to it. It's about dialing it down and saying, okay, maybe I can switch over to just the music, or I can listen to a podcast. And at that point, let me go ahead and write down exactly what I want to get done during this period of time, sort of like a recipe to yourself to support your working memory. And then while I'm in this sort of higher dopamine state, what can I remove? Maybe I can turn on like a freedom app or something else that's going to like block things that are going to distract me long term. And then let's just open the application. I already know what I'm doing. I'm already here. Let's just open it, listen to some music. Maybe I'll write a heading. Maybe I'll just like outline some things. And at that point, you're kind of like you've stepped all the way down, and you're sort of in a space where you might as well get started.
I like that. And it's baby steps too. It's not as if
Exactly.
get from this space to this space and then do all the things, because I think that's
Exactly.
like the fight or flight response we get because we're like, I'm not ready to do all the things. But sometimes I say that to myself. Just do one thing, Megan. Just one.
Yeah, just the next step. Like I often describe it as jumping, if you think about getting a task done, it's kind of jumping into a cold pool. Maybe with a friend, you could say, we're going to do it together. 1, 2, 3, and you all jump together. That's body doubling. But if you're by yourself, you're probably not going to jump in just without anything. You're probably going to need to take one step, feel the water, take the next step, same thing. And so you were doing the same thing to get some tasks done.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I really do. And there's another thing I found so fascinating and beautiful on your website, and I wrote it down, is the favorite dopamine activities that each of your coaches has, including yourself,
Yes.
next to your name. And I saw a video the other day of this woman talking about how you can tell when people were raised in a home that was full of parents who taught you how to treat your body with kindness when it was going through a stressful state. And she talks about how it's the type of friend that says, hey, you're having a hard time. Let's go for a walk together. Or, hey, are we about to have a crazy night out this weekend? Let's have some healthy meals so that we can prepare our bodies for it. But for so many people out there, especially if their parents had undiagnosed ADHD, and they're teaching you the different ways that they're coping with their dopamine enticing activities, it's so interesting to see what people do to get the dopamine they're so craving. So tell me a little bit about what prompted you to put the favorite dopamine activities out there.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I think it's one of the main things, and we've sort of had to develop a new system for this actually, is people can struggle. They can really struggle to come up with dopamine activities. I think I've had people say like, oh, I want to eat healthy, so I can't do dopamine. But dopamine is all of your senses. It's not just taste. It can be sight, it can be smell, it can be sound. It can be a combination of all, 3 or 4 things together. And so we're always trying to talk about different dopamine activities. In fact, in the academy, we have a dopamine break space where people put down their dopamine activities just to kind of help you think about it, because we're often more dopamine deprived than we realize because we're not actually doing all of these things.
That's so cool. And for any of you, go to the show notes and go to Skye's website, because the dopamine activities are all super healthy and great activities to try. Tell us a little bit, with your ADHD diagnosis and the work that you do. You also have a podcast, you're meeting with clients. how do you possibly organize your day in a way that makes sense for you so that you can stay on top of everything, aside from having an assistant or someone that helps you organize things?
So yeah, I will say I have an assistant. Shout out to Kate, who helped organize this meeting, who manages my calendar along with Robin, and also emails as well. But what I do personally is I actually theme my days a little bit. So you'll find me on Monday, you'll find me in a coffee shop somewhere writing. That's what I do on Mondays. And then I sort of do a bit of a half day on Tuesdays. And then my Wednesday and Thursday are like big performance days. So I'll do all the podcasts, all the client sessions, all of that kind of thing in one big go. And it's just something that I found particularly helpful. We know with ADHD, we can struggle with transition times. So if I reduce my transition times and I do everything together, it can be a busy day, but then I'm sort of like, oh, I take a break and then I can do something else on another day. So that's the biggest thing I've done. I mean, I could I could go forever, but the one thing is like just chunking things that are similar together, similar types of activities in order to reduce transition times.
Tell us a little bit more about the transition times, because I like to think that I know so much about ADHD, but tell us the struggle. What is the struggle with transition times?
Yeah. So with ADHD, some research has found what they call a bleed effect, which basically means that if you have ADHD and you have executive functioning struggles, one of the things that you can struggle with more than neurotypicals is moving from one kind of task to another. So if you've ever had a day that's just meeting and then you're like, oh, and between this meeting and this meeting, I've got an hour. So I should probably do that deep work activity, but then you never do. And you're like, why don't I ever do it? It's because you don't have enough transition time to get into focus to do that deep work activity and then to get out of focus and prepare for the other events. So if you're doing emails, you want to do them together. You might have heard that one before, but also if you do meetings, you want to do them together. If you have to write, you want to write together. Anything you can do to kind of chunk things as much as possible without, running out of dopamine, because, it can be boring. You're like, right, I'm going to do all my accounts on one day. Maybe you're going to have to break that one up. But yeah, that's kind of the idea of transition times.
Thank you for saying that, because ADHD can come with a lot of shame when we don't know why we're doing a certain thing. And especially when I worked in the corporate world and I would have coaching, and then I would need to be listening to calls, or I'd need to be meeting with this person, and the constant influx of emails at the same time. I thought I was great at multitasking, but I was so annoyed when I couldn't get in and drop into something and get something done. I'm like, I'm perfectly capable of doing this. Why can't I just do it? And so part of the ADHD work, I think, is just knowing so much more about why things are happening so that you can get in front of it and say, this isn't working for me, so I'm going to do it the way that you do. What a cool idea. And then you get to look forward to those things, like going to a coffee shop and writing, because that is what fills up your day. And it's kind of like those videos that you see where they're like, okay, I planned a meeting for the afternoon or a doctor's appointment. It's like, now I can't do anything until I get to the doctor's appointment.
Yeah. So you're just like, right, this is a day of appointments, so it's fine.
Exactly. Like one after the other.
Yeah.
Even yesterday, I had 2 meetings and I was so excited because I was going to do the 2 meetings and I was going to get some stuff done afterwards. But I walked into the living room and I'm like, I don't know why I feel so drained right now, because I did these 2 meetings and I was so excited about the day. And now I feel like I have nothing else to give.
Yeah. It's that energy management, like it's such a big part of what we do.
Oh, so cool. I'm learning so much. Okay, so let's talk about, I have 2 other questions for you. One that I keep seeing, and I'd love to just bring to light a little bit more, how everyone out there, especially with ADHD becoming more of a topic of conversation, more and more women getting diagnosed at a later age. Now everyone's saying, well, I feel like just everyone has ADHD at this point.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
That's a good question. I mean, so ADHD is persistent and pervasive executive functioning difficulties. So I think the biggest thing would be to say, okay, well, if you're struggling with working memory, if you're struggling with dopamine, struggles, and you're struggling with transition times, is that something that persists and is pervasive across your life? Or is that something that happened, one time when you were really, really tired and then you got to it? Because we can all struggle with executive functioning difficulties. I mean, sleep deprivation, there's lots of things that can affect us, but it's that persistence and that pervasiveness that really, really moves it into an ADHD space. But that being said, women in particular, but a lot of people are receiving a late diagnosis of ADHD. I mean, I'm one of them. So it's also worth considering that might be you.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you think everyone has ADHD, maybe it's just you're a part of the population that also has ADHD.
We do find each other. We do find each other. Like one of the other pieces of research they have is, neurodiverse people, we communicate in very similar ways. We connect with each other. And then neurotypicals are the same, and we can have a bit of problems cross communicating. We can get our wires crossed more often. So, yes, if you have ADHD and you're wondering why all your friends have it too, there's actually a potential reason.
Okay, that's so real. I love that. And another, controversial topic is, some people talk about ADHD as a superpower. And that's one thing that really helped me embrace my ADHD to its fullest potential. And so I still love using the terminology because I do think our brains are super powerful when you know enough about them that you can change some of the ways that you've learned about going about life. So what's your perspective on an ADHD superpower, and do you have one?
I think it's an interesting one. I mean, I think that there is nothing wrong with being positive about ADHD. Too often, when we're going through the research, we do often have to put aside just endless paper after paper, which is about all the negatives of ADHD, and focus on those positives. I think ADHD gives us a very spiky profiles. There's some things that we struggle with, but there's some things that are our real amazing thing that we're particularly good at. We have those strengths, that creative problem solving, that original thinking, that empathy. We know that is the case. It's from research. It's not just, what we think. It's actually true. And so, yeah, I guess what is mine? I think I'm very, very lucky to be able to, when I'm communicating with somebody live, I really love doing that. I could talk about this. I could help people, I could problem solve, helping people reach their goals all day. And so I'm very lucky I get to do what I love to do. I get to do the thing that I would consider to be my real ADHD strength.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. This has been fascinating. I'm curious, is there anything else that you'd like to share, either to my listeners who are struggling with organizing their lives in a way that makes sense for them, or maybe even just to people who are just finding out about their ADHD diagnosis? What's your advice?
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're struggling with organizing, one of the things I would say is that ADHD systems do not have to be painful. Often we are given systems that feel very uncomfortable for us. And we're sort of like, well, I have ADHD. This is what I deserve. And I know that sounds really strange, but check your brain sometimes. Sometimes that's how we talk about ourselves to ourselves. But if you have ADHD, your systems can actually feel good. They can feel good from when you're doing them to when you're writing things in the planner to when you're executing on them. They can feel as natural and comfortable as neurotypical systems if we make those adjustments and if we make those shifts. And yeah, if you're just diagnosed, or if you think you have ADHD, welcome. It's a good space to be. And you've probably done a lot. You've probably been doing really well. You've been probably working super hard, and it's nice to know why and be able to relax a little.
Oh, beautiful words. And where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find us at unconventionalorganization.com everywhere. And that's where you can find our free resources, our articles on goal setting. We also have a podcast called the ADHD Skills Lab, where we interview wonderful people like Megs, who we are going to be interviewing. And we ask them about their ADHD strategies. And we also have research recap sessions where we talk about the research that's come out this year into ADHD. And we have kind of fun. Me and my co-host, we do a bit of a it's fun, and we get into the research, and we get into kind of what we think they're doing well, what we think they could do better, all those kinds of things.
Oh, love that. Oh, that's so cool. Well, Skye, thank you so much for joining us here today. And I can't wait to continue to follow you and learn so much more. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. This has been such a fun conversation. So thank you so
Yay.
much.
Okay, is she not amazing? What did you guys think about the transitions? Because I always knew that was a problem that I had, but didn't actually connect the dots with the transitions in ADHD. What? Today, I am practicing body doubling with a friend of mine. We set up a recurring meeting on Mondays where we meet for an hour, we talk about what we're going to be doing, and then we complete the tasks that we say that we're going to do. Have you guys ever tried body doubling before? Because it is such a cool opportunity for those of you with ADHD and holds you accountable to some of the things that you want to get done when you're having trouble getting them done. I'm also really fascinated with what Skye was saying about giving yourself a reward when you get to the destination, not when you complete something, but just making it to your desk. What does that reward look like for you? I'm super curious. And then dopamine filling activities. I have been taking my kids for walks more lately, especially if we feel a little bit dysregulated around the house and I can tell that we're just super cooped up. I will take them for a walk, even if we only have 10 minutes. I'm like, let's get out of this house. I set the timer. I'm like, let's go and let's get back in a reasonable time. I swear, every single time we do that, it changes the day. It changes our attitudes. It changes our outlook on life. So check out some of the dopamine filling activities that Skye and her team has on their website. It's just really fun and just gives you more ideas that are healthy to fill up your cup when it comes to the dopamine that you're lacking. Thanks for listening in, everyone.
Oh, I did this new feature on the podcast platform that I use where you can actually send me a text message. So if you scroll down to the show notes, you can click a little button and it'll send me a text. Share your thoughts. It's so easy because there's a button for it. So cool. I mean, there's other ways to get in touch with me in the show notes too, but try it out. I'm so curious how it works. And I would love to post a text message that I get. So you guys are amazing. Thank you for all of your feedback. I have been hearing some beautiful, beautiful things about the podcast. So thank you. It keeps me going. If you would like to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, please consider joining my Patreon account where I'll post some additional content and some wise words from me, if you will. Join my Facebook page, like and share this podcast with whomever you think could benefit. I also have this amazing woman who is my friend. She owns a small batch skincare business in Colorado, and I have been using her CBD bath bombs forever. And my code, I have a code that you can use to save 10%. If you use that code, you can order bath bombs for yourself and have it sent to you. I actually just had my father order the direct pain cream, and it is incredible. I use it for cramps, and he used it for his knee that was giving him a ton of pain. And he looked at me after he put it on. First, I had to promise him he's not going to get high, right? And he laughed at me, but also I think he was relieved that I confirmed that for him. But he looked at me and he was like, I can't believe this is working right now. He's taken aspirin, he's taking all of these other things to try to get the pain to diminish in any way. And this direct pain cream works. So check it out. Use my code to save money and you can have it shipped to you. So it doesn't matter where you are. Additionally, me and my husband use HelloFresh. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. So these are literally just free boxes that we can give away. So I put a code down in the show notes below. If you sign up for a free box, then we get to feed our family for a week for free. So thank you so much for supporting us. And you get to eat as well. So how about that? What a world we get to live in. If nothing else, just thank you for participating and listening.